Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Alright, so this is kind of what I'm looking at so far today. Let me go to the 30-minute time frame. Basically, we're still inside this super heavy selling channel. We see that in the pre-market. This breach is slightly, I don't really consider that a breach. More than likely, if I adjusted the channels, it'd probably be hitting very, very close to that. But with that said, we basically touched that resistance range twice in the pre-market, both times pulling down. So potentially this resistance is still really strong, the one at the 746.40. So we'll see if that continues to pulse downward in the day. Now I know a lot of this was due to the Iran conflict, where there was kind of just a pause, but still nothing really official yet other than both sides saying that if you don't bomb us, we won't bomb you. So we'll see if today kind of sells the news off or not. But I am excited about ACN. I do have 150 calls going, so those are going to be nice. Now, one thing I have noticed in the pre-market is that we haven't been seeing the HIG buying up a ton. So we'll see where that ends up on open. And we'll also check our volatility. Of course, the volatility will be pulling down slightly. But if this head and shoulders does play out, then volatility will be jumping up. Good morning, Clay. It was okay. I always have such busy days and busy weekends and stuff. Not a lot of time to relax, unfortunately. So basically what we're going to look for today, because I don't want to rush into positions, is that we're going to see, one, if we pull up to that top of the channel again. Okay, because if we do pull up to the top of the channel, that would invalidate the head and shoulders we have going on here. So that's kind of the first thing that I'm looking for. Second thing is, if we get to the top of the channel, how does the market react when we get to the top of the channel? Does it try to push through, or does it start seeing volatility pick up and we start rejecting? Because again, this channel has been holding very, 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 very strong ever since basically the beginning of July. Doesn't mean it can't be broken. Absolutely it can. But we just have to trade this very, very cautiously because I know a lot of people are going to try to just buy into calls to chase the momentum, but I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the smart thing to do here. Good morning. Right, Clay? Yeah, I know. What I really need to do is I just need to move to the East Coast because waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to trade every day is it's not the worst, but I feel like as I'm getting older, it's just been harder and harder and harder. So I've always woken up really early for my jobs or, whatever work I've done, so usually isn't an issue, but alright, so we got about a little over 6 minutes until the market starts. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to wake up at like, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then start trading at 9:30. So it's something I've been heavily considering. Or even moving to like the central United States or something to where I'm waking up at like 7 o'clock instead. Alright, so basically thesis of today is that, give me a second, I want to highlight this big candle here. So this range is really important. I don't think they're going to sell down this entire range today if we do see a rejection, but that's something we have to kind of be prepared for. Now, the reason why I do think that we could be seeing selling today isn't just because, potentially we have this good news with Iran, but let's see if I can pull it up really quick. Screen's gonna go dark for a second. Oops. So this is the CME for this FOMC for Wednesday. And even though the odds of a rate pause are 66.3%, this is still an extremely high chance of a rate hike. Okay. Now this is actually one of the first times I've seen it be this skewed in terms of the meeting being this close and there's still this much indecision by the market. I know a lot of people didn't get a chance to watch the video last night, which is totally okay. But this is a big concern, okay? So this means that with that 33.7% chance of there being a rate hike, this is going to cause a lot of institutions, a lot of big money to really kind of be fearful right now. So we'll see how that plays out. I do think that more than likely we're going to be getting the pause rather than the hike. But it's still one of the highest odds that I've seen in a very, very, very long time. And I know with last month's FOMC, we had an extremely red day. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, potentially, this head and shoulders at the top of our channel here, still forming very well. So I'll be interested to see what the volatility is, what the HIG is doing, all that good stuff. Dollar is still fairly elevated as well. You'd expect with the good news the dollar would actually be pulling down, but it has actually been picking up volume, which is a little concerning. Now TLT this morning is doing really well, which means that the yields are pulling down slightly, which could definitely be bullish for the market. So the top of our channel here is basically at that 747.40-ish. So we'll just keep that marked out. And market starts in 30 seconds. Ooh, ACN is flying right now. I like that. It's up over 2%. Okay, let's see the HIG. HIG seeing a little buying, but we'll wait a couple seconds for everything to adjust. Let's get our max pain and our gamma walls set up. Sorry, just checking some positions really quick and then we'll get started. Okay, let's see where our gamma's at. So our call wall's at the 741. Just gonna mark that there for a second, and right there. Then our put wall's at 740. But that's probably because a lot of the last trading session was at a lower level. So I'm sure these are going to adjust. Unless we're just going to be pulling down. One thing annoying about Webull between the computer and the phone is that the phone doesn't have the ability to write on the horizontal lines like the computer does. So anytime I go to look at the SPY on my phone, it will wipe those or wipe the text off. And our max pain is also at 741. Call wall and max pain. Which that aligns kind of with, this head and shoulders playing out, selling the news, and pushing down, which the market can push down quite a bit right now and we'd still be green. So definitely something to think about. Now on the 5-minute time frame, we are having that mean reversion, but I'm not going to engage on that right now. Volatility has pulled down, which we did expect. It did have a low of the 98.14, currently at 98.81. So we'll be checking back with the gamma in probably like 5 minutes. Volatility has ticked down pretty hard though, it's at 98.47 currently. And the HIG is up at 79.39. So as long as we continue to see buying in the HIG, then the markets should be bullish. Now I am going to put a point right here. And that's just going to identify the top of our channel for us. Now, if we do get the top of that selling channel, I might be inclined to take some dated puts. Volatility still pulling down. Now we can pull to that basically 746.02, slightly higher, slightly lower, and that'd still be within the bounds of this right shoulder, of this head and shoulders. Look at semis. Of course, semis dumping down off the news. Same with QQQ. Now QQQ, I believe, still has this selling channel as well, unless I deleted it. There it is. So we're still very much within that selling channel on QQQ. Not even close to breaking that yet. Semiconductors. This could actually be a head and shoulders. So we'll be watching that pretty closely. I would just be very cautious with calls today because I do think that today could be a sell the news type situation. Because again, with the conflict in Iran, it's not like there's been any real agreements signed. You know, it's more just don't bomb us and we won't bomb you type situation, which could change, you know, in a split second. And then along with the potential of the rate hike on Wednesday, even though it's still only a 33 point something percent chance, it's still pretty elevated. So if we get to the top of that channel, I want puts for September. And with those puts, I'll probably take maybe like SQQQ calls because they've been doing very, very well for me. And they basically capture the entirety of the SPY. Not entirely, but they capture the majority of it. Could also take Success calls as well, but the premium on Success has been actually quite high. So I haven't been liking those as much lately. Not until we see the premium calm down a bit. Volatility is at the 98.21. Now I'm going to go ahead and check our gamma. Basically every 5 minutes I'm going to check it right now until we see it adjusted. And it's currently still at the same level, which is basically telling us that dealers should want to trade in that range today, which we could do and the market would still be green. So overall it would still be a successful day for the market bulls while not being a, you know, successful day. Now, this week I probably will be taking some 0DTs, but I'm going to be pretty cautious just because we do have a lot of different news or data sets to contend with, and then the fact that, you know, potentially we could end up with a ceasefire, potentially we could end up in war again. It's all kind of a coin flip right now, and as much as I want to trade into coin flips, I really don't. So we'll be taking it somewhat easy until some of the overall volatility, and volatility, I don't mean just downside, just volatility overall calms down a little bit. I am super happy with these ACN calls though. So I basically loaded a whole ton of ACN 150 calls back when it was at like 118. It did hit a low of 116.75, but I loaded those calls for the 150 strike for September. Um, they are up a ton right now, almost 300%, and I have over 20 of them. So I'm super stoked about that. That makes my day really good. Oops, wrong time frame here. Was too busy looking at my phone. So we are having a little bit of selling. Volatility's picking up slightly. It was at the 98.20. It's currently at the 98.74. Good morning. Yes, I'm very happy to be streaming today. Last week I was just having a really tough week. Um, as you all probably know, I don't have the best health. Um, so there are times where even if I want to stream and everything, I just can't even get out of bed. Um, so that's kind of what last week was for me. But trying to make this week a better week. Thank you. Yes, I am. I'm feeling a lot better this week so far. Trying to get a lot more rest as well. So we're gonna check the gamma again. I just want to be really on top of if we see anything shift on us or not. Okay, so the call wall has moved. So 1 second, let me adjust this. So it's moved to the 745, which makes a lot of sense. Then the put wall has moved to the 742. Alright, that makes a lot more sense. We're not going to worry about the max pain right now just because we're pretty far from that range. Alright, so one thing we do have to consider is that currently we are within the lower Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame. So even though I do think that there's a lot of reason to sell today, we just have to be kind of cautious right here because, this is that mean reversion territory. And with the call wall being at that 745, I do think there's a lot of reason for them to pull the price back up towards that range or even slightly higher, sell a ton of super high IV calls at that area, and then pull back down. Volatility is still climbing though. It's at 99.04. The HIG ran to 79.40, currently at 79.38. So if we're going to see a continuation within the selling today, we should be seeing the HIG be, pulling down alongside that. ACN is just flying today. It's already 152. And the interesting thing is that even with this massive push to the upside, my SQQQ calls that I do have going right now haven't lost very much premium at all. I mean, they're still extremely green. They were up around 52% last I remembered, but currently they're up 32%. So they're holding very well. What strike on SQQQ? So currently I have the September 18th 50 strike calls. What's the price on SQQQ right now? Basically 44. I remember buying these, I believe when was that, 38 or 39, somewhere in there. But still gives us basically 2 months, and that should definitely appreciate in price. So far we're seeing this Head and Shoulders playing out really well. We do have a very, very minor resistance range, or not resistance, support range. I don't mix them up, but I always am the opposite way by mistake, so I do apologize for that. But we do have this minor resistance at the 742. I just did it again. Minor support at the 742.86. So potentially we have that to contend with as well today. Is it a good idea to buy now? It definitely could be. We just have to be really concerned because, again, we're still in the selling channel, which for SQQQ that would be super good. Again, SQQQ is basically the inverse of TQQQ, so it's the bear ETF for QQQ. With that said, we haven't broken this channel yet. If we could get up towards the top of that, that's really when I want to add a few more. But we may not get to the top of that. We might just sell downward and then pull towards this 744 range if we start heading back upward again. No, it'd actually be far further than that. It'd actually be closer to maybe the lower 40s slash higher 30s. So potentially could be a good spot to take it. But I do think with the call wall today being at that 745, we could be heading upward. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. When I stream sometimes early in the morning, one of my cats decides to sit outside my door and meow super loud, which is a little bit of an issue because my daughter's room is pretty much right next to my office, so I don't want my cat to wake my daughter up. Now, volatility still at the 98, 95. It did hit the 99, so a little bit of a pullback, but not much. So if we can break this support at the 742.86, that will be really important. I do kind of expect a little bit of a bounce at that range, but if we don't, then we should be pulling towards that put wall. HIG's still selling a little bit, so I'm pulling back towards the 79.37. Volatility back above the 99, so it's at 99.09. At 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that'd be 2 p.m. my time. Yeah, just remind me. Um, I'll write a note down, but just remind me in case I forget. Yeah, Wonders, my daughter's the same. So she's either a little ball of energy or just super exhausted. But I know if she wakes up right now, then she would just be like wired awake. So, alright, here's that support coming in. So we hit that 742.86. Well, 1 penny above it, but we should push into that range. Which means that we should be pushing below this put wall. Now, for the scope of the day, again, kind of the same as always, ignoring any news or anything right now. This is kind of the scope of the day. Okay, we should be, if we're going to be heading back upward today, we should be heading towards that call wall or slightly above. With us pushing down, we should be selling below the put wall, but don't get too bearish below that range because very likely the dealers are going to try to close us in between somewhere. Now again, we do have our max pain at the 741 if I remember correctly, which does mean that dealers can, I actually just want to mark that range out. But with the max pain being at 741, the dealers definitely can pull us to that area. And I know the last, I want to say 4 sessions, it could have been 5 now, but I want to say 4 for sure. We have closed almost exactly at that max pain level. Now, really quick, I want to zoom out to the daily time frame. I want to see where the 5-day moving average is at. So it's at the 743. We did have the 10 MA cross below the 20 MA, but we still need the 10 MA and 20 MA to cross below the 50 MA. So 5-day support being at that 743, that gives us the range of 745 to 742, or 741, excuse me. So basically what we're looking at right now. Now this is kind of the area that we want to engage on calls. I'm going to try to wait for a little bit further push downward, but I do want to try to get a 743 call going if the premium isn't stupid. So let's see what the premium is. Not too bad. So I will be looking for a couple calls. But again, we can pull down all the way to the max pain or below. And this head and shoulders worked out super, super well. And we're still sitting right within our selling channel. So all right, so I have engaged on a couple of the 743 calls. Now that we're below that put wall, again, that kind of is where the dealers want to sell a ton of puts, which means that's where I want to buy calls. So I like that range. I think we definitely have a lot of reasons to head upward. Maybe not as much as everybody would like, but we should see some upside from this. Because again, dealers should ideally want to be in between this range. We did break through this support, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. That was that 742, whatever it was, 742.20 something. So with these calls, I am going to be looking for the 20 MA. Now, 20 MA obviously is super far away right now, so we do have some room before we catch that area. So a couple other things that I forgot to bring up this week that are potentially pretty bearish for the market is that South Korea is implementing a new margin restriction, or a higher margin requirement for a lot of their equities, which means that there can be a lot of selling just to get the cash and everything to meet those margin requirements. So potentially we have that to deal with. That kicks in on the 31st, if I remember correctly. We have some new news with the tariffs. Haven't read over it completely, but I just know that we have some new news with it. So I am basically looking for this low 744 range to take profit on these calls. Well, potentially we could see these calls go all the way back up to the 745 and above. I'm not really looking for that today. So my exit will be basically at the 5 mile, or at the 20 mile here, which is at the 744, 58. This will be pulling down towards us, so I do expect it to be around that 743, 80-ish range. But we'll see. All I know is that we grabbed our calls at a really, you know, quality time. This is exactly the range we want to grab them at, and we were fortunate enough to get it. So, but if we could pull up all the way to the 20 mile, that would be a super, super, super ideal position. Not setting any market conditional order or anything like that just yet. Volatility is at 138, so it has been pulling up pretty massively, but even then I still expect these calls to do pretty well. Now, if we do hit the 100, or excuse me, the 743.80 range, then I probably will take profit on the majority of the calls at that area. Volatility has pulled down slightly, but not really anything major yet. Or as they say that, it picks back up, so of course. Now, if we do sell below the 741, then I'll add a couple more calls, but I don't want to overcommit to calls today, just because again, we can trim a ton of weight off the SPY and everything right now, and the day would still be green. But I think there's a lot of bearish catalysts for this week. But it does seem like we're starting to build support here. On the 1 minute time frame, you can see how we pushed down to the lower Bollinger, and now we're starting to, even though it's sideways, we're starting to pull away from that lower Bollinger. That is a good signal, so we'll see if we can start heading up eventually. Where is the HIG? The HIG has pulled down quite a bit. It was all the way up at the 79.40. It's currently at the 79.35. So a little bit of selling in the HIG. Nothing super major yet, but a little bit. So I kind of don't like Apple right now. Um, I did take a pretty decent short position on it, and instead of pushing downward, they did a 5 mile retest. This is the daily, by the way. So that's when I shorted. They did a 5 mile retest and just pushed it right back up. So yeah, kind of lost a decent chunk of put money there. But overall, I think it's a little far away from the upper Bollinger right now, and I do think it has some room to pull back, especially now that it did close this cup, very likely creating the top of a cup here. Let's see, let's hide those. Could be the handle. That's when I shorted it. It just kind of blew up on me. Um, this could be forming a handle, which overall that would be bullish. But I don't like taking calls at that range either. Um, again, when I take calls, usually it's down there. So I don't dislike Apple right now. I think it can head upward, but it's nothing I want to take any positions on right now. Kind of same with the put side of it as well. Yes, it's pushed upward. Yes, it's pushed above the daily supports, but that doesn't mean it can't, continue pushing upward. So I will be buying another call down here. Remember, if we do break the 741, I do want a couple more calls. And we broke that range, which means I want another call. Now I'm not going to overcommit. I'm not taking a whole ton of calls because, again, I am still fairly bearish biased right now. I do think that we can see a lot of selling. But from the technical standpoint, this is definitely our mean reversion territory. This is also below that put wall. So, two different reasons of why we should see some upside from that range. Yeah, Jin, we'll find some time. Um, Probably around 5 p.m. for you would work. Might be slightly later though, because that's usually like right when I put my daughter to bed for her nap. So if I can get her down on time, she's a ball of energy. But if I can get her down on time, then that'll work out perfect. All right, and now we wait. Volatility is very, very high. It did hit 186, currently at 155, so has pulled down slightly. And the calls that I have going are the 743 calls. We're starting to see our 20 mob pulling down as well, which is kind of exactly what I was looking for. Again, I do kind of expect to exit these calls around that 743.80-ish range if we see our upside price action. QQQ still selling off. Semis still selling off. Semis are actually down a ton right now. 2.5% just about. Let's see what's going on with them really quick. So they broke through two really important supports I see. And QQQ also broke through multiple very, very crucial supports. But they're all in that same mean reversion territory, so I do expect a little push upward. $20 is currently at the 744 on the dot, so that's aligning very, very well with the 743 80-ish range if we do start pushing back upward. QQQ is seeing some buying, and same with semis. So as long as we see continuation within that, then our calls should be good to go. The average on the 743 calls currently at 0.72. Also have some cheap 44 calls or 744 calls going as well, which my average on those are at 0.59. So the 73 calls are doing good. The 74 calls, or 744, excuse me. 743 calls doing good, 744 calls still need some work. QQQ and semis starting to sell again. Oh, let's check our volatility. Volatility is still super high, so it's at the 186. I love seeing my ACN almost at 153. The HIG is at 79.34, so it's still dropping down very slightly. What's the gap on QQQ? Let's see. I turn off Bollinger's. I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I think it's super likely. But it needs to give us some upside reprieve first, and then it could do whatever. Higgs still dropping slightly, so 79.33. Let's see. So semis are falling because China just started doing something with chips. I didn't read the full news. QQQ and semis basically holding that same area on the downside. And again, not going to overcommit to calls here. So even though it's very tempting to continue adding more calls into this, just going to be very patient, wait for the level that we're looking for. Volatility is at the 101.14, so extremely high right now. Yep, I'm currently in calls, looking not for the upper Bollinger here exactly, because I don't really think we're going to see that today. But I am looking for this 20 mile. So, and we have multiple different conditions of why we should see at least a little bit of upside reprieve, unless we're just truly going into full selling mode. And the thing is, if dealers do get flooded with sell orders, they will sell below the put wall, they will sell below max pain. It doesn't really matter, they'll sell just to get it sold. They will fulfill those obligations. But on a standard day, this selling should be coincided with that the dealers are just trying to sell very high V contracts. But we continue seeing HIG pulling down, we continue seeing volatility picking up. Those are both really bad signals to see. So if we don't get some reprieve pretty soon here, I might just cut my positions and be okay with my other positions kicking butt right now. Now we do have a support range at the 739.22. Not that I want to head down there while holding these calls. We see the ADL still pulling down quite a bit, but there has been an accumulation around that range. Doesn't mean a whole lot yet, but we'll see in hindsight. So I'm going to go ahead and toss my 744 calls. Just holding on to the 743s now. Volatility is still picking up, so potentially we're entering, real sell-off type territory. Semis have pulled down almost $6 since we bought that second round of calls. So they're really, really pushing. Volatility at the 101.95. Let's check our HIG. HIG is at the 79.32. So this next lower Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame would be at the 739.32. If we do push that range, which will be this support range at the 739.22, I will tack on an additional call. But currently I just want to be patient. Still holding the 730, or excuse me, the 743 calls that I still have. We haven't entered full-blown sell-off conditions just yet, but we're getting pretty close. So let's see what they do with this support at the 739.22. If they do try to bounce off that range, or start building support at that range, that'll be ideal for the calls. If not, then I think it'd be a good idea just to toss those positions. So I'm gonna add a call, but if I do need to sell it, then I will more than happily sell it. major push down in the ADL during that candle as well. Volatility at the 102.29. Yeah, this is just starting to really crash right now. If we drop below the 738, we're just gonna cut these calls. Yep, and we're out. Go ahead and sell those calls, just be out. No reason to chase that dragon. Even if we get our upside at this point. Volatility jumped up massively. So it's at 100 or 102.85. So until we actually see the ADL shifting, until we see volatility pulling down, which we started to see that a little bit in here. That's why I was willing to buy those calls, but it just turned into a waterfall. While I don't think it's going to happen, we do potentially have this 731.95 to contend with. Now, if we do see buying return, then we will jump back into calls, but we're going to be very, very patient here at this point. Because today could get extremely, extremely red. So make sure you're not holding on to a call right now. Just be patient. We'll try to find an opportunity. Oh, it's okay, Quinn. I'm seeing a lot of selling orders coming in on the actual share side too. So I want to look at the gamma, because let's see if the gamma has shifted any. So the call wall's at 741. Put wall at 740, but I do think that put wall is going to shift pretty dramatically here. I want to delete that Max Payne. Not interested in that right now. Volatility at 103.09. So it's continuing to climb. So that channel top is definitely kicking in here. I didn't think it'd be this bad today, but geez. We talked about it being a strong channel. Really is doing work right now. The SQQQ calls are up almost $3 since us talking about it this morning. I was expecting some reprieve. Um, we did see volatility picking up a little bit, but it wasn't until we basically broke under that 730 or that 740 range that volatility really started to pick up. But semiconductors got some bad news from China. So China is doing something to, you know, create chips or something like that. I didn't get to see the whole news, but that is definitely pulling the market down quite a bit right now. And then again, with all the other factors we have to contend with, um, just a lot of reasons to be bearish this week. Even if we do have this, we don't really have a ceasefire in place, we don't have an MOU in place. We do have a pause in the strikes though. But potentially we could see the market dropping, very, very hard today, if this continues. So we definitely called it with saying that there is going to be the sell the news. I just wish we took puts, but didn't really give us a great put opportunity this morning. You know, it pulled down almost immediately, had a little bit of reprieve to the upside, which I would have expected to push into the upper Bollinger. It didn't, and then just off the cliff it went. Volatility's at the 103.66, so still extremely, extremely elevated. That's super awesome. No, I'm not holding any of my calls right now. Um, we talked about cutting that at that 738 range or 739. Basically, I said if we go below the 739, we need to just cut the calls and be out. So that's what happened. We cut the calls and we were out. Volatility has pulled back a bit, but I still don't want to engage on this just yet. Starting to see a little bit of support in here, but not enough for me to want to engage on this just yet. Volatility was at the 103.68. It's currently at the 103.18. So that has pulled back a little bit, but it's still super, super high. Semis are starting to sell off again. It was at the 503, now it's at the 501.60. So I don't think we're done with the selling just yet. These ACN calls are up 100 or 360% right now. It's absolutely bonkers. But we got a new low of the day. Yeah, I think potentially today we could be selling all the way down to the 731, 732 range. Might seem crazy, but the selling is just not stopping on semiconductors right now. Same with QQQ. Volatility is back up to the 103.75. Semis are going to break 500. So they should hit that 498.54 support. Crazy to see. But that definitely is starting to look like they want that 478. Not today. I don't think that happens today, but very likely over this week or over the next couple weeks, we should see semis, lose a ton of weight. Now I want to check the gamma again because I am sure it has shifted. Nope, still the same. But there is a ton of puts written at the 736 strike right now. So I'm very happy we closed our calls earlier. Would have been pretty brutal if we didn't. Volatility's at the 104.13. And let's check what our Higgs doing. Higgs at the 79.30, so that's been pulling down pretty aggressively. And we talked about the dollar this morning. We saw, let me see, I think it was on 30-minute time frame, was back here. But we saw that this was just pulling up against the, positive news, right? Which usually if the dollar's pulling up, that's going to take the majority of the weight. So semis are starting to see a little bit of buying. Remember they did hit the 500, now they're back up to the 505. Yep, 505. Again, though, this isn't something I really want to chase just yet because volatility is still very elevated. Yes, it's pulled down slightly, but it's still at 103.75. That puts us right in selling territory. So while we're seeing a very brief reprieve here, it doesn't mean a whole lot just yet. And to me, this is kind of one of those days where if you didn't catch the puts at the open, um, very likely there's not going to be a whole ton of opportunities in between that. Yes, you can always scalp some of these smaller ranges, but the big play was taking those puts. What did QQQ sell down to today? The 675.95. Just be really careful here if you try to engage calls, because there's still a ton of selling signals. But we have been buying up a little bit, especially semis. Semis, again, we're at the 500. Now they're almost at the 509, currently at the 508. So a little bit of buying kicking in here. Same with QQQ, they were at the 675.95. Currently at the 679. Seeing a little bit of a bounce in the ADL as well. Not a whole ton, but a little bit. Volatility is pulling back slightly, so it's at the 102.73, 102.70, and the IG is at 79.32. So while I'm personally not going to chase this, I do think there's, the potential for that upside here. Just have to be really careful. QQQ is at the 680 again. So basically up a whole $4 since. Semis are at the 510. So up a whole $10. Just have to be really careful because this could be forming another leg down. Doesn't seem like that just yet, but it definitely could be. Last thing we'd want to do is take calls and then it pulls down on us again. But so far the put wall hasn't shifted. So technically we still could pull above that 740. The ADL is almost positive as well. Doesn't look like that because it's been on a downtrend. But in terms of the actual percentage or the actual numbers, it's starting to climb back up pretty well. I just don't feel good about the taking calls at this position. Now, I do have some doctor appointments this week, so at least for today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, well, I usually don't stream Wednesdays anyway, but for today and tomorrow, I do have to have the streams be somewhat shorter. But for Thursday and Friday this week, I will be having longer streams. Maybe I'll try to stream Wednesday during FOMC or something. Volatility's still pulling down here, so that is a good thing if you're taking calls. QQQ still buying. Semis. It's hard to say if semis are still buying. They're still kind of chopping around that 510 area. They've been bouncing between that 510 to, 509. And the HIG is back up to 79.33. So a little bit of buying in the HIG as well. So even though I'm super hesitant to take calls right now, I think it could be potentially pretty good. And we do have this support range again at the 739.22. So the market could be building some support underneath that and then heading upward. Again, I'm just kind of hesitant right now. I just don't like what the market's doing overall. But perhaps we could be over that selling news. Because we did have that news from China with the semiconductors, and maybe that was all the selling the market needed to do to kind of get that news out of the system. With that news kind of sold off already, maybe they can start buying up at this point. ADL is looking very, very strong. So in terms of the ADL numbers, we were negative 745,000. Now it's back up to the 364,000. I know that doesn't mean a whole lot, but in terms of the money volume, that's showing quite a bit of volume pushing to the upside here. Volatility was at the 104, hit the 104.13, currently at the 101.51. So this is looking pretty good so far. Still seeing good buying out of the QQQ and semis. And volatility is at the 101.11, so that's still pulling back pretty heavily. So yeah, it's very likely we hit this 742-ish range. Our middle Bollinger on the 5-minute time frames at the 740.95. Semis are starting to sell again. So what did they go up to? They went up to the 512.77, give or take, and now they're back at the 509. So just be a little cautious. But we're not seeing volatility pick up alongside that. So volatility is still at the 101, or excuse me, the 198. So it's still pulling down, even if we are seeing semis selling a little bit. Now, if we start seeing QQQ start to sell, then volatility will very likely start pulling back up again. Right as I say that, it jumps back up to the 101.16. $101.28. Hold on, I'm gonna say bye to my daughter really quick. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. I swear, go AFK for like 5 minutes and everybody leaves. Anyway, so while I was gone, there's been a couple important tweets that went out. So Trump warns of military action. Uh, he basically said the window for negotiations is limited, warning that if the talks fail, the US will resume very powerful military operation. And then he said, we are having deep talks with Iran. If they are not successful, we will return to powerful military operation or military action. So that's interesting. Got very close to the 20-minute or the 20 mile on the 5-minute time frame. Alright, let's check everything now that I've been gone for a few minutes. So volatility's at the 101.33. The HIG is at 79.31. And so far, it's starting to look like a little bit of a rejection off of this 5-minute 20 mile. So if that's the case, then we would be getting additional leg downward. Semis so far are kind of telling us this story because they did pull up to the 512.77 or something like that if I remember correctly. And since then they've been struggling to maintain that range. But semiconductors move very quickly, so that range could absolutely be bought back up in basically no time at all. QQQ, similar story, hit the 682.18. Now it's at the 681. Now I want to look at something really quick. There's that 737.29. We're going to go ahead and mark some of these ranges out. Volatility set the 101.08. So we've broken through that range. We can delete that support at this point. Now, technically, we do have a very large inverse cup formed here. So, as usual, kind of like with a standard cup, we would take positions at the top of the cup. This would be calls, looking for bullish structure to create the handle. to basically continue pushing down further. We have a ton of support ranges below us to break through. We don't have a whole ton of resistance ranges above us currently. We basically are still contending with this 746.40. And if, we continue pushing downward throughout the day, then this 740.32 also becomes a resistance. But we're not at that point yet. Um, it is looking likely, however, though. So while I can't do it this week, I am going to be trying to stream a lot more in terms of the actual hours that I stream. Usually I stream about 2 to 3 hours each session. I'm going to try to take a lot of these sessions all the way until about 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So can't do that, or I can't promise that this week, just because I do have a lot of appointments. But I will try to on Thursday and Friday. Volatility has been picking back up, so it was dropping below that 101 range. Now it's back to the 101.58. We see semiconductors back at that 504 range, so very close to the low of the day. QQQ continuing to sell off again. So this would align very well with creating that handle that we talked about to the downside. So if we do close that 736.54, then we can basically expect even a smaller inverse cup from that, smaller inverse cup from that, until we actually start breaking some of these support ranges. But with today's session, I do need to get going very, very soon here. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask right now is a very, very good opportunity for that. Jin, I wrote down on a note to meet with you. Can't promise exactly at 5 p.m., but it'll be around that time, so maybe around 5:30 p.m. for you. Now, for tomorrow's data, we don't really have a whole ton of data in the morning, so I'm not too worried about any real adverse market reaction from tomorrow's data. Today, we basically just have the quarter two GDP now, which isn't a really big data set at all. The big data sets are really the FOMC on Wednesday. And then Thursday morning, we have a ton of super, super, super crucial data. So the PCE, GDP, all sorts of different consumer data in the morning. Friday, we have some important data, not the most, but I'm really looking forward to that employment cost index coming out at 8:30. Because if that goes down, that means that people are getting paid, they're having to pay less employees, which means that there's less people employed. So that's very important for all the labor market stuff that we pay attention to. But does anybody have any questions about today's trading or any other positions or anything before I head out for today? Because I do need to get going in about 10 minutes, so. I marked this range back in June. So that makes me super happy. This is on ACN. Now we are having the Upper Bollinger Day 1. I know this really doesn't pertain to anybody besides me. I don't think anybody in here has ACN positions. Um, but today would be Upper Bollinger Day 1. Upper Bollinger Day 2, I would expect a higher high from that range. Which means that potentially push up to that 162. Which is very nice. I want to look at the 1 minute time frame here. So interesting enough, on the 1 minute time frame, on SPY we actually do have a head and shoulders built. Now just need to see the continuation of that back into the low of the day. Volatility is at the 101.47. HIG at 39, or excuse me, 79.32. My IBM shares are almost back in the green, which makes me very happy. These ACN calls are almost up 400%, which is just stupid. It's okay, Jin. We're gonna find plenty of other trades like that. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna have time today. I'm gonna see if I do, but I do want to try to set up a lot more positions like that. Um, because we don't need to be sitting here day trading every single day to build your portfolio, you know. Sometimes just some of these very, very long dated positions would do very well. It's kind of like the 20 calls that I got for ACN. I paid, what, 310 per? Now they're over almost 1500 per. So, um, you know, it doesn't take a lot to make a lot. We just have to really nail down some of these really solid opportunities. And there's always great opportunities out there. We just have to really scout out for them. So that's what I'll be doing over the next couple sessions, um, especially when I don't have a lot of time to stream these next few days. I'll be looking for some of these really good opportunities. So I'll see if we can lock anything down. But yeah, basically spending $6,000 to be up 22,000. So I'm super stoked about it. We had another position like that which I missed buying. Um, but I did watch list it. It was on Merck and Company, that healthcare company. Those calls ran from, I don't know the exact price, I forgot. It was like 30 something dollars um, per contract all the way up to like $1,100 per contract. So that was an absolutely bonkers and stupid trade that we absolutely missed the boat on. But there's all sorts of trades like that. So we'll lock some down, we'll find them. So I'm not too worried about that. It's always super good trades in the market to be had. Okay, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and end stream here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to be trying to stream a lot more often, but it's just going to be a work in progress. But thank you so much, and I will talk to you in tonight's recap and in tomorrow's stream. So take care, everybody. Have a good day.